Let's talk Voyage to the Sunken City commons before we get an inevitable balance patch that's going to change the meta, and let's start with Demon Hunter. First up, we have the Abyssal Depths, and yeah, this is bad, it gets an F. Next up, we have Glaive Shark, which people thought was going to be really crazy, and it has seen a little bit of play, at least at the beginning of the expansion, but the Naga Demon Hunter deck that's tearing up the game right now doesn't run it, so even though it's a very good playable card, I'm only going to be able to give it a B. Next up, we have Bone Glaive, which is one of the best cards in the format right now. Very strong card, definitely gets an A. Moving on to Druid, we have Ajaran Gardens. I tried it out quite a bit myself, and it was just a bit too clunky. I'm going to give it a C. Flipper Friends, I love this card. It's not as good as I would like it to be, but the flavor is great. It doesn't really see a lot of play right now because people can't find room for it, but it is a pretty strong card, so I'm going to go ahead and give it a B. Miracle Growth was actually nerfed already. It used to be 7 mana. It still sees ton of play. It's an amazingly strong card. That's an easy A. Moving on to Hunter, we have Barbed Nets. This definitely sees play, so that's going to get an A. Conk's Call, draw a Naga and a spell. It's a arcane intellect that tutors, but it's also a little on the slow side compared to what people are doing right now, and Quest Hunter has no use for it, so even though it's a good card, I'm only going to be able to give it a B. Moving on to Ajaran Saber, this is a neat card. Some Beast Hunter decks are using it, but those aren't as good as Quest Hunter. It's a decent card. I'm only going to give it a C though. Moving on to Mage, we have Spell Coiler. This is a pretty good card that's used in Naga Mage, so it's going to get an A. Ajaran Sweeper is a very good card in Mech Mage, especially when you get the Sunken version. I'm going to go ahead and give that one an A. Mecha Shark is the face of Mech Mage. It's the card everyone hates in that deck. This one is an easy A. Moving on to Paladin, we have Seafloor Savior. This card is better than I thought it would be. It's a good card in Mech Paladin. Mech Paladin is still hanging in there as a pretty good deck right now, so I'm going to give that an A. Bubble Bot is a card people were afraid was going to be broken. It is a good card if you can pull it off, but it's a little bit slow. I don't see it get played that often, although it is starting to see some play. I think I do have to give it an A. We have Immortalized in Stone. This is a very good card seen in Holy Paladin lists. It has a lot of taunts spread out over 3 bodies. It does very well against aggro, so for all the play it's seen, I'm going to give it an A. Moving on to Priest, we have Illuminate. This is a very good spell in Boar Priest, and it's a 0 mana spell. Those are always good, so this is going to get an A. Queen's Guard is a 2 mana Naga that I have never seen anyone play. It gets an F. Switcheroo was so good that it got nerfed, and it still sees play because it's basically just a 3 mana arcane intellect, so I'm going to go ahead and give it an A because it still sees play in Boar Priest. Moving on to Rogue, Fillet Fighter is a pretty good card. Dealing 1 damage can get through Divine Shield. If you play it alongside a Mr. Smite, you get 4 damage for 1 mana, so I'm going to go ahead and give it an A. Cutlass Courier is an excellent card. 5 health for 3 mana helps it stay alive. You usually end up drawing at least 2 pirates with it. Very good card. I'm going to give it an A. Blood in the Water is a neat card in theory, but it's a little bit too expensive, and it doesn't really see any play, so it's getting an F. Moving on to Shaman, we have Scalding Geyser. Deal 2 damage and dredge for 1 mana. What more do you need? That's an A. Schooling is a card that does see some play. Those piranhas can help you control the board, and it is only 1 mana. I'm going to give it a B. Anchored Totem is a decent card, but I'm only going to be able to give it a C. Moving on to Warlock, we have Ajaran Scavenger. This is a Murloc Warlock card, and since that archetype is basically dead, I'm going to go ahead and give it an F. Circus Cultist is a decent card in Abyssal Warlock, which is not as good as Agony Warlock, unfortunately. Although if you pair it up with Bran, you can put 2 curses in their hand, so I'm going to go ahead and give it a B. Dragged Below is a decent card in Curse Warlock. 4 damage hits a nice pain point for 4 health minions, of which there are quite a few in the mid game these days, so I'm going to give it a B. Moving on to Warrior, we have Forged in Flame. This has proven to be a really great source of draw for warriors. It sees play in Control Warrior. It definitely gets an A. Guard the City sees play in Control Warrior, but I wouldn't say it's a major player in that deck. I am going to give it a B. Ajaran Trident is a card I never see anyone play. It's definitely not as good as Outrider's Axe. I'm going to have to sadly give it an F. Moving on to the neutrals, we have Click Clocker. This is a staple in every mech deck right now, including Mech Mage and Mech Paladin. Very good card, gets an A. Pelican Diver is definitely a meme. It gets an F. Piranha Swarmer is not a card you ever want to put in your deck. It's more like something you want to generate. So I'm going to go ahead and give it an F as a card you would put in your deck. Murkwater Scribe is a decent card for Naga decks, especially Naga Mage. Being able to cheat some mana cost is nice. It has premium stats for 2 mana. I'm going to give it a B. Naval Mine has some meme decks built around it to try and deal a bunch of damage, but those aren't very good, especially compared to other decks like Shellfish decks, for example. So I'm going to go ahead and give that an F. Rainbow Glow Scale is a good Naga card that has spell damage on it. It has premium stats for 2 mana. It gets an A. Security Automaton is a really annoying card in mech decks, especially in Mech Mage. It grows really quickly. It definitely gets an A. Tuskar Trawler is a pretty good card if you're playing it in Pirate Rogue, which is a little bit more useful in that deck because you're trying to hit the sunken vessels. It's also playable in Pirate Rogue, so I think I'm going to go ahead and give it a B. Puffer Fist is a card that was so good it got nerfed. It used to be a 3 mana 3/4, now it's down to a 3 mana 3/3. It's still played in a lot of decks, including Naga Demon Hunter. This definitely gets an A. Reef Walker is a card that has surprisingly seen a little bit of play in order to generate those swarmers. I think I'm only going to have to be able to give it a C though. Sea Scout Operator is a really good card for mech decks, so it gets an A. Slime Scale Diver, if there was a good Murloc deck, this would probably be a good card in it, but as it stands, there aren't really any good Murloc decks. Not a bad card though, so I'm going to give it a C. Treasure Guard sees ton of play, mostly because you can cheat it out with Drekthar, but it's also just a decent card in a Naga deck because it does have 5 health and a taunt, and it does draw you a card. This gets an A. Baba Naga is not a card I see very much. It's a little bit expensive, and I think I'm going to go ahead and give it a C. Excavation Specialist is the de facto. Here's a dredge card that everyone can use. 4 mana 3/6 is just too expensive for what it does, even though it does reduce the cost by 1. I'm going to give that an F. Selfish Shellfish was supposed to be a meme. It still is kind of a meme, but it has made its way into some playable decks. War Priest is definitely better than Selfish Shellfish Priest, and Mill Warlock hasn't turned out to be as good as people thought it would either, but it has seen some play, so I'm going to give it a B. Ajaran Sentinel is not very good. It gets an F. Gangplank Diver is really good in Arena. People are really complaining about it over there. It's a very good card to get off of a Discover effect, but it's not really something you want to put into a deck, so I'm giving it an F. Gorlock Ravager would be good if Murlocs are good, but they're not, so it gets an F. Barbaric Sorceress is way too expensive for what it does. Unfortunately, it also gets an F. I also did a review of all the Sunken City legendary, epic, and rare cards, so be sure to check out those videos.